अथ चतुर्थो Dhyayah. Skanda 5, Chapter 4. The story of Rishabha. Sri Shuka said, the son of Nabi had at his birth itself the marks of Vajra, Ankusha, etc., the unique emblems of Mahavishnu on the undersurface of his feet. Equanimity, peace, non-attachment, splendor, and many-sided virtues all combined in him to make him an extraordinarily powerful personality. So the ministers, the subjects, the Brahmanas, and the Devas were all eager to have him installed as king. His father gave him the name Rishabha, signifying the numerous blessed qualities like his striking personality, impressiveness, strength, fame, power, courage, etc., which have been the topic of compositions by many a bard. Once out of jealousy, Indra did not send rain to his land known as Ajanabha. Smiling at this, Rishabha, by the application of his extraordinary yogic power, generated rain. Overjoyed on obtaining a worthy son according to his heart, and overcome with the attachment of parental affection for him, Nabi addressed him with a broken voice as, "O darling, O beloved one," etc., although that son was none other than the Supreme Being who had assumed human form. On knowing of the great confidence and love of the people and the ministers for his son Rishabha, Nabi installed in him as king for the protection of law and order in the land, and himself with Meru Devi went to Badaryashrama, where he adored Vasudeva, manifest as Narayana through samadhi and austerities calculated to bring peace to the mind, and gradually attained mukti. Here, O Parikshit, 2 verses on the greatness of Nabi, who can imitate the great actions of Nabi, whose pure worship pleased Hari so much that he became his son. Where is another man so devoted to holy men as Nabi, to whose vision the holy men, pleased with respectful worship and offerings of dakshina, brought the Supreme Being himself? Bhagavan Rishabha, realizing that the region of his advent was a place dominated by Vedic rituals, adopted the life of a religious student under a teacher of the Vedas, and after pleasing the teacher with gifts, came back home with his blessings. He adopted the householder's station of life in order to teach the world about the duties of that order, observed all the ceremonials and duties laid down in the scriptures, married a girl named Jayanti, given to him by Indra, and begot by her 100 sons, equal to himself in all respects. Of all these sons, Bhadrarata was the eldest and noblest. Bharata was the eldest and noblest. This Ajanabha Varsha came to be known after him as Bharata Varsha. Next to him, the eldest 9 other sons, Kushavarta, Ilavarta, Brahmavarta, Malaya, Ketu, Bhadrasena, Indrasprik, Vidarbha, and Kikata, were elder to the remaining 90. Amongst these 90, another 9, Kavi, Hari, Antariksha, Pipalayana, Avirhotra, Drumila, Chamasa, and Karabhajana, became great devotees and teachers of the Bhakti cult. Their life and teaching spreading the message of peace and love and revealing the glory of the Supreme Being is dealt with elsewhere in the form of a conversation between Vasudeva and Narada. The remaining 81 of the brothers, who were humble in nature, learned in the Vedas, adept in sacrificial rites, and extremely pure through their observances, became Brahmanas according to their father's instruction. Though ever established in the Atman, ever transcending the unholy and unspiritual influences of the world, perfect in self-mastery and filled with bliss, he behaved otherwise, just like a man of the world. In order to teach the duties of the householder's life, which people had forgotten and given up in the course of time, he observed all the rites and ceremonials of the householder, and ever unattached, peaceful, helpful, and beneficent, he directed the world's attention to the idea that household life is a field not for mere undisciplined enjoyments, but for the acquisition of dharma, wealth, good name, progeny, and spiritual attainment. For ordinary people usually follow the examples set by noble ones. Though he was well versed in the Vedic law that shed light on all aspects of dharma, he nonetheless followed the rules of statecraft like conciliation and others, as directed by his Brahmana advisors. He adored the Supreme Being by performing 100 yajnas, perfect from the points of view of ingredients, place, time, age, faith, officiating priests, and the various deities. In this land, under Rishabha's rule, everyone had sufficient to live upon, and therefore looked upon others' properties as non-existent, like a sky flower. Their only desire was for more and more of love for the great Lord and Master ruling over them. Once while moving about the country, Rishabha was in Brahmavarta. There, an assembly of sages where a large audience was present to listen to him. Rishabha delivered a sermon, especially to teach his sons, though they were endowed with self-control, humility, affection, and discipline in all matters of life. Atha Panchamodhyaya, Skanda 5, Chapter 5. Rishabha's sermon. Rishabha said, O children, the sacred human body that you have got in the world is not meant to be utilized for sensuous enjoyments as by low creatures, who too get such enjoyments through the filth they consume. It is to be used for the observance of austerity with noble spiritual ends. By such austerity, the mind becomes pure, enabling one to attain the bliss of Brahman. The association with holy ones is the door for entrance to the realm of liberation. And the entrance to hell, spiritual degradation, consists in association with worldly minded men who are intensely attached to women. Holy men are those who are even-sighted, peaceful, unperturbed, friendly to all, and endowed with all good qualities. Or holy men are those who consider the intense attraction they have for me as their noblest attainment in life, who have no attachment to worldly minded people, nor to wife, children, properties, etc., and who are satisfied with that much of requirements as are enough to live on. Spiritual degradation. Whoever struggles to satisfy the senses is bound to be morally and spiritually lethargic and do many evil deeds. I find no meaning in men doing again and again those very kind of karmas which have brought into existence this body, which, besides being short-lived and ephemeral, is the cause of all sufferings now. This repetition of these karmas is bound to cause new embodiments and more sufferings. So long as man does not make an earnest inquiry about the spirit within, so long will he, out of ignorance, be debarring the dawn of spiritual consciousness in him. So long as he works for selfish attainments, so long will his mind be inclined only towards such actions and not for spiritual inquiry. And for such body-centered men giving to selfish actions, embodiments are caused again and again. When ignorance clouds the mind, it is enslaved by the impressions of actions done earlier. So long as the mind does not develop attraction and love for me, Vasudeva, so long release from embodiment is out of question. As long as man, heedless of life's purpose, fails to perceive that the actions of his body-mind are not of the Atman, the spiritual self, he will be completely oblivious to his spiritual nature and behave like an ignorant person, a merely body-centered being, seeking delight in the sex-dominated life of the household, but suffering from its endless woes. The union of man with woman is spoken of by great men as a new knot in their heart, added to the already existing knot of I sense. For from that springs the terrible infatuation causing the extension of the sense of identification, consisting in the sense of mineness with regard to house, property, son, friend, money, and so on. This knot of the heart, the I sense, ahankara, which is the result of tendencies created by past actions, is therefore identical with the mind. So if man is to be totally free from bondage of sex, his mind, free from all the modifications, should be dissolved in the category superior to it. Then man becomes free from the cause of bondage, namely ignorance. The means of upliftment. The means to be adopted by one who wants to break this knot of the heart are as follows: devotion to and service of an enlightened Guru who is only myself, renunciation, equanimity in suffering and enjoyment, the constant remembrance that suffering is there in any attainment in this world or in the year after, intelligence, reflection on the true nature of all experiences, abandonment of works for personal gains, austerity, dedication of works to me, hearing the recitals of my divine actions every day, contact with great devotees, having me as their object of adoration, singing about my excellences, non-entertainment of animosity to anyone, equanimity, tranquility, cultivation of intense desire to get over identification with home and one's own body, study of scriptures, living in solitude, conquest of the senses and the vital energy, strong faith, celibacy, vigilance, restraint of speech, the knowledge and insight to see my presence in everything, practice samadhi, cultivation of equanimity, firmness, perseverance, and discrimination. By practicing all these, an earnest aspirant can get over the knot of the I sense. After one has, by the instruction of the teacher and the careful practice of the above disciplines, completely overcome the knot of the heart, the I sense, which is born of ignorance and forms the seat of tendencies leading to works, one can give up all practices of yoga. For once the I sense of self-centeredness is shattered, sadhana, by conscious effort, becomes redundant. These instructions should be given by a father to a son, a teacher to a discipline, and a king to a subject. If they wish to attain to my state or aspire for my grace, it should be done patiently without getting annoyed even when they are found unreceptive. They should not be allowed to get more and more involved in works for sensuous gratifications with which their discriminative faculty is already dulled. What gain can a teacher have by confirming such men, already blinded spiritually for want of discrimination, in their involvement in this whirlpool of samsara by prompting them to works and rituals for worldly advantages? The ignorant men of the world, without a proper awareness of their ultimate good, acquire objects of enjoyment out of their intense desire for them. In mutual competition for these petty objects of enjoyment, they quarrel and fight amongst themselves and suffer misery without end. No wise person who knows what is good for man and is endowed with a kindly disposition would, on seeing another man steeped in ignorance and perverted in intelligence, encourage him to persist in the wrong path he is following, even as he would not do so with the blind man going towards a pit.
One who would not save another from the path to death, on which the latter has entered, cannot be called one's guru. If he is the guru, one's relative; if he is the relative, one's father; if he is the father, one's mother; if she is the mother, one's deity; if he is the deity, one's husband; if he is the husband. This body of mine is of inexplicable nature, as it cannot be accounted for by karma. My mind is dominated by sattva, quality, by virtue of which devotion to God flourishes in it, and adharma finds no place, as it has been left far behind. So wise men call me Rishaba. Hence all of you who have sprung from my heart serve without any reservations. Bharata, your brother, who is adorable for his excellences, serving him is equal to looking after subjects. Among objects that have existence, plant with life, are superior to lifeless things like stock and stone. Among living objects, moving beings like animals with consciousness are superior to plants. Among creatures with consciousness, man is superior. Higher than man are astral beings. Higher than these are beings like Gandharvas, Siddhas, and Kinnaras. Greater than Siddhas and Kinnaras are the Asuras. Greater than they are the Devas, with Indra at the head. Greater than these are the sons of Brahma, the Prajapatis. Among the sons of Brahma, Rudra is the greatest. Greater than Rudra is Brahma, who is my devotee. And I am the devotee of holy men. I do not consider anyone to be equal to a holy man. I do not find anyone higher. What food men offer me through holy men with faith and devotion, that I accept wholeheartedly. Not so even what is offered in fire as the Agnihotra. In this world, it is the holy man who holds within himself my primal and most worshipful form, the Veda. I do not find anyone equal to the holy man, in whom the supremely pure qualities of sattva, control of mind, control of the senses, austerity, forbearance, truth, benevolence, benevolence towards all, and realizations are present. These supreme devotees, who have nothing to call their own, do not pray for any personal advantage even from me, the infinite and the absolute being, and the granter of heavenly enjoyments and liberation. Why will they seek small perishable worldly advantages? Seeing that all things, moving and unmoving, are ensouled by me, you must salute them every moment with sincere feeling. This, indeed, is my real worship. The true meaning of all that man does by mind, speech, sight, and his other instruments of knowledge and action is only my adoration. Without this kind of worship of me, man will not be able to rid himself from the noose of Yama, which consists in the great infatuation of looking upon the body as a spirit. Sri Sukha said, though his sons knew all about the teachings in a way, he made his sermon in order that the world at large might understand this doctrine. After this, Rishabha, the friend of all, desired to teach and demonstrate to the world the dharma of the Paramahatma, characterized by repose in the self, renunciation of action, devotion, knowledge, and dispassion. He therefore installed in succession to him as the ruler of the country his eldest son Bharata, who was himself of highly devotional temperament, and who was devoted to the servants of the Lord and dependent on them in all matters. Then he left his residence, taking with him nothing but the body. He was thenceforth like one inebriated, completely nude, and having dishevelled hair, withdrawing into his heart the sacrificial fires like Ahavanya maintained by him. He took to the life of a sannyasin and wandered away from his country, the Brahmavatra. In the midst of men, he appeared from time to time as a senseless man, blind man, dumb man, deaf man, a ghoul, or a drunkard. In such repulsive attires, he was found to remain silent, not answering even anyone's questions. He travelled through towns, villages, military cantonments, cowpens, cowhead settlements, travellers' shelters, mountains, forests, and hermitages, all along the way as an elephant in rut is pestered by flies. Evil men persecuted him by threatening, beating, urinating on him, spitting on him, throwing stones, cow dung, and dust at him, and insulting and abusing him. Being firmly established in the knowledge of the real and the unreal, and in the conviction that one was nothing but the universal spirit, he had no identification with the body, which for man in ignorance is the most real entity, but was for him unreal. So none of these persecutions disturbed him, and he travelled all over the world alone, his mind merged in the Atman. By nature, he was endowed with very handsome and well-proportioned hands, legs, chest, arms, shoulders, neck, and face. His face always shone with a natural smile. His eyes were long and red like a lotus petal, having pupils that assuage the grief of man. The parts of the face, like the ears, eyes, cheek, neck, and nose, were all well proportioned and symmetrical. The veiled smile on his lips always attracted the interest of women. This handsome form of his now presented the appearance of a gull with disheveled hair, dirty and unwashed owing to the lack of body consciousness. Rishabha realized from the persecution of ignorant people that the society was hostile to the practice of yoga. To retaliate against the persecutors would be still worse. So, he gave up the habit of moving about and adopted what is called Achkaravriti, the way of life of a python which remains at a spot without going for food anywhere. He laid himself in one place, took his food there, performed the functions of excretion there, stretched himself there, and rolled in the fecal matter and got himself covered with it. His excreta, however, was so fragrant that the atmosphere up to 10 yojanas was filled with its sweet smell. Similarly, he followed also the ways of the cow, deer, even of a crow, walking, sitting, eating and drinking and excreting like all those creatures. Bhagavan Rishabha then practiced various forms of yogic discipline, experienced the unbroken bliss of the spirit, and attained to the sense of oneness with the all-pervading being. In the course of it, various yogic powers like movement through the sky, speed like that of mind, power of disappearance, entrance into another body, clairaudience, etc., came to him automatically without his striving, but he rejected them all. Rishabha's end. The Raja Parikshit said, O Great One, in the case of those who are established in the Atman, they have already burned the seeds of karma and the fire of yoga. How can the powers of yoga that have come to them automatically prove to be a bondage to them? Why did Rishabha refuse to accept them? Sri Sukha said, what you say is true in a way, but though the mind has been controlled, it cannot be trusted too much. The best of the yogis do not do so, knowing its fickleness and untrustworthiness, just as a determined hunter would not trust a captured animal with any freedom. So it is said, do not compromise with a fickle mind, for by doing so, even very powerful personages have lost all their spiritual powers. A yogi who trusts his mind too much is like a husband who does so in regard to an unfaithful wife. The fickle mind might betray him into the hands of his enemies, like lust and its allies, just as the faithless wife might betray her husband by colluding with her lover. Can any man of true discrimination put full trust in the mind, in the belief that it has come under his control? The mind, which is the root cause of all dangerous passion, like lust, anger, pride, greed, sorrow, infatuation, fear, and the bondage of karma. Thus, though he was a king of kings, he veiled his divine nature from the vulgar eyes by assuming the attitude of a senseless man in dress, language, and conduct. Next, in order to show how great yogis abandon their body, he established himself in the perpetual consciousness of the Atman by recognizing the indivisibility of the Atman into the seer and the seen, and thus overcoming even the modicum of tendencies he had assumed for the blessing of the world.
Without connection with even the Linga Sharira, by the mere remaining momentum left of the impulsion given by Yogamaya, his body travelled all over the land and reached the region of Konka, Venkata, and Kutaka, included in Dakshina Karnataka. There he travelled in the forest at the foot of the mountain known as Kutakadri, like a ghoul with the mouth filled with stones, hair dishevelled and stark naked. Once a forest fire broke out there by the mutual rubbing of bamboos in a strong wind. The whole forest, along with his holy body, was burnt in that fire. In the evil age of Kali, Arha, the king of Konka, Venkata, and Kutaka, happening to hear about the doings of Rishabha that transcended the conduct of all the ashramas, would interpret it, owing to the influence of his own evil deeds of the past, as connected with a school of atheism. Abandoning his own faith and the way of life leading to the state of fearlessness, he would preach this ascetic gospel, the product of his own evil brain, among his subjects. Hearing the preaching of this king, evil-minded men of the Kali age would abandon the rules of conduct laid down in the Vedas for the purification of the body and mind, transgress the deities presented in the Vedas, prefer mean forms of worship concocted by their evil brains, give up purificatory rites like bath, achamana, etc., adopted the practice of plucking the hairs on the head and refused to accept the Veda, the custodian of the Veda, and the God that the Veda reveals. They would find satisfaction in following superstitious practices fabricated by their own brains and without any Vedic support. In the end, they would fall into utter darkness. But then in Rishabha's avatara, a cause of evil, what is its purpose? So it is said, the purpose of Rishabha's incarnation was to show people dominated by rajas that ritualism for enjoyments here and hereafter is not the primary teaching of the Veda, but that it consists in renunciation, knowledge, and devotion, which bring enlightenment to the spirit. There are the following verses on this subject. Among the 7 continents of this earth, surrounded by 7 seas, Bharatavarsha is the most holy. Here people enthusiastically sing about the Lord's incarnation and his supportive actions. The line of Priyavrata is famous for its holy traditions, for it is in that line that the Supreme Being took his birth and demonstrated the dharma of one seeking liberation. Which yogi can, even in his imagination, follow this path followed by Rishabha? All yogis only try to obtain a little of those psychic powers which Rishabha Deva threw away as dirt. This account of Rishabha, which reveals the greatness of and truth about the Vedas, the higher worlds, devas, holy men, and spiritual duties, has the power to remove all sins and is the source of everything auspicious, spiritual, and good. Whoever hears this or makes others hear it with a mind devoted and concentrated will attain to higher and higher stages of devotion to Him who is self-effulgent and the support of all. The wise men, finding their spirit suffering from the heat of sins pertaining to the life of samsara, the miseries arising from physical and supra-mundane causes, try to assuage themselves from that heat by bathing in the nectar of God love. The bliss arising from the devotional experience is such that they reject even moksha, considering the highest value open to a jiva, which comes automatically to them as a result of their bhakti discipline. Rather than getting merged in Him, they prefer to continue in the core of bhakti experience the consciousness that they are the Lord's own. O King, the Lord Krishna is the master teacher, visible deity, and leader for you, the Pandavas and the Yadus. Nay, he has even ever been your servant, acting as a messenger and a charioteer. So be it. He grants mukti, liberation, to those who worship him, but seldom bhakti, that intense loving devotion which makes God himself a servant of the devotee. Salutations to the Lord Rishabha, to that exalted being who, on account of his constant consciousness of the inherent bliss of the Atman, was absolutely indifferent to everything else. To that exalted being who, out of his mercy, declared the truth of Atman, the one refuge from all fears, to men caught up in the sleep of body consciousness and utterly oblivious of their own ultimate good. Atha Saptamodhyayah. Shri Shuka said, on his father resolving to install him as ruler, the pious Bharata made himself ready for his duties and first married Panchajani, the daughter of Vishwarupa. By her he begot 5 issues, just as out of Bhutadi the 5 Bhuta Shukshmas come out. These 5 sons were Sumati, Rashtrabhrit, Sudarshana, Avarana, and Dhumraketu. It was from the time of Bharata's rule that the land known till then as Ajanabhavarsha came to be called Bharatavarsha. That learned king, following the example of his illustrious father and grandfather, observed his Swadharma and ruled over his subjects with great affection for them, encouraging them to follow their Swadharma. The Lord is of the form of Yajna and Kratu, the 2 forms of sacrifice without and with the installation of the sacrificial post. He is to be worshipped by these 2 forms of sacrifice. With great faith he performed according to his capacity, and at proper times many sacrifices like Agnihotra, Chaturmasya, Pashubandha, and Somayaga in their elaborate and abridged form. When the various yajnas with their many subsidiary rites were being performed, Bharata, the master of yajnas, offered all the fruits accruing from them to Vasudeva, who is Parabrahma, who is of the form of yajna, who is the controller of the Vedic mantras and the deities invoked thereby, and who is the ultimate doer and the master of all works. Powerful current of bhakti developed in the heart of Bharata, which was purified by the above mentioned worship through works, and there shone in it the form of the Lord Vasudeva in all the splendor of his supreme majesty, with the marks of Sri Vatsa, Kaustubha, Vanamala, conch, discus, mace, and other paraphernalia as revealed in the hearts of other great devotees like Narada. After he ruled for a crore of years, he felt he had completed his allotted period of active life. So he divided his ancestral kingdom and wealth among his sons, and abandoning his luxurious palace, went away as a wandering ascetic to the Palah Ashrama, a famous place of worship of Sri Hari. In that place, Sri Hari, out of love for his devotees, manifests to their vision in various attractive forms. That place is purified by the river Chakra Nadi, wherein one gets Mahavishnu's holy emblem, Salagrama, which has cavities with symbolic designs on both sides. Abandoning all desires from the heart alone, peaceful and blissful at heart, he stayed there in the thinly wooded locality, continuously worshipping Sri Hari with flowers, leaves, tulsi, water, and food offerings consisting of tubers, roots, and fruits. By the daily adoration of Sri Hari in this way, the sentiment of devotion grew so strong in him as to melt his heart. The massive bliss he experienced expressed itself as horripilation all over the body. Anxious longing blinded him with profuse tears. His intellect got submerged in the lake of his heart, filled with the joy of devotional experience generated by the constant contemplation of the ruby-red feet of his most beloved Lord. Disciplining himself in devotional practices, he wore a dress of deer skin, impressive with his curly matted hair, turned tawny and wet by constant bath at times of worship. He stood before the brilliant rising sun at dawn, invoking him as Surya Narayana with the following rich description of his glory. We seek refuge in that splendorous fusions that is Surya Narayana, the Lord manifest as the sun deity, untouched by rajas and bestowing the fruits of the karmas of all the sustenance that projects the universe, indwells it, and projects the jiva, pursuing his desires. With that person's we seek refuge for the proper direction of our understanding. Athashtamodhyayaha. Bharata getting a form. Shri Shuka said, one day, Bharata, after finishing his ablutions and his daily rites, sat on the bank of the river for about 3 muhurtas, uttering the pranava. O king, just then a solitary doe approached the river bank to quench her thirst. While she was drinking water, the terrifying roar of a lion was heard from the neighborhood. The timid doe of tremulous glances was frightened beyond measure by the roar, and while still in the act of drinking, sprang to the other shore with a wild and distracted look in her eyes. Being big but young, she delivered, even while springing due to the shock that fear generated, and the young one thereupon fell into the current of the river.
Fear, delivery, the act of springing, separation from the flock, the cumulative effect of all these circumstances distressed her so much that she fell down dead in a cave on the other side. The Rajarshi Bharata saw that forlorn and endangered calf of the deer being swept down by the current of the river. Overcome with pity for the motherless newborn, he caught it and brought it to his ashrama. The Rajarshi was now possessed by the idea that the fawn was his own, and consequently got infatuated with it. Daily he fed it, fattened it, protected it from enemies, fondled it, and in every way tried to please it. In proportion to the increase of his interest in it, his zeal in the devotional practices declined, until he gave them up totally some time after. He thought, alas, the swift-moving action of the wheel of time has separated this poor fawn from his parents and his flock, and it has taken refuge with me as his father, mother, brother, relative, and friend. Putting his trust entirely in me, he knows none else. So even at the expense of my own interest, I am bound to protect, nourish, fondle, and in every way look after the interests of this calf of a deer, knowing as I do the sin of abandoning one who has sought refuge. Many a worshipful person who followed the path of peace and service of the afflicted has, for the sake of such work, abandoned his own self-interest in important matters. In this way, getting infatuated with the fawn, he always came to be accompanied by it while sitting, lying, walking, standing, or eating. Fearing that it might be attacked by dogs or wolves, he took it also with him whenever he went out to collect grass, flour, fuel, leaves, fruits, roots, and water. Whenever it stopped on the way interested in something or the other, he took it on his shoulders or lap, or embraced it and enjoyed intense delight in doing so. Even when he was engaged in worship, he would now and then get up and have a look at the fawn to assure himself that it was safe, and would pronounce his blessings on it, saying, "May you live safe without any danger befalling you." If for a time it could not be seen nearby, he would become grief-stricken, like one who has lost his all. Owing to the intensity of his attachment to it, he felt heartbroken at its absence, and bemoaning over its fate repeatedly, he would in the most pitiable way say to himself, "Ah, would this pitiable young deer, orphaned of its mother doe, come back at all to me, trusting me to be a good man out of its own innocence, overlooking the perversities of a luckless fellow like myself, cruel and mean like a hunter? Shall I ever see it, thanks to the protecting hand of the Lord, browsing somewhere in the woodlands of this ashrama. I hope it has not been eaten up by any predatory creature, a wild dog or a wolf, moving about singly or in herds. Sun, the universal benefactor and the repository of the Vedas, is about to set, and the fawn, a treasure deposited with me for safe custody by that doe, has not yet returned. Will that gem of a fawn come back to my unlucky self and delight his own folk with its childish frolics? As it plays about and I sit there with my eyes half closed in fake samadhi, it approaches me in a mood of love quarrel for not participating in its play, and in order to know whether I am really in samadhi, prods me with the tip of his horn, soft like water, with a show of great hesitation and fright. When he pulls away the grass where Havis is arranged, and I happen to take him to task for the same, then like any boy of the hermitage, he withdraws from all play and remains motionless with all his limbs controlled. What great austerities must this land have done to deserve this good fortune of being marked with the tiny and beautiful hoof prints of this young black buck? For these hoof prints, besides cheering me with the prospect of tracing the whereabouts of their owner, make this land a suitable holy place for the performance of all sacred rites by those who seek heavenly felicity and worldly welfare. Referring to the mark of the deer found in the disk of the rising moon, he would say, "Is it that the moon has taken for protection this poor motherless fawn, seeing that it has now strayed away from the precincts of this ashrama? The loss of this fawn, which is like a son to me, is scorching the land lotus of my heart like a forest fire. Are you, O moon, intending to quench that heat by the cool and refreshing water from your face, augmented by the sight of my condition, as I go about pitiably in search of my young deer?" Thus distressed by vague and baseless fears, the Rajarshi was led to stray away completely from his practice of yoga, austerities, and the worship of the Supreme Lord by his own prarabdha karma, destiny, in the shape of a deer calf. How can it be attributed to anything else? In the case of one like this Rajarshi, who had abandoned even his sons, considering them to be an obstacle in the spiritual quest, what other explanation can be given for this strange phenomenon of obsession with a deer calf, which did not belong even to the human species? Thus the Rajarshi Bharata happened to slide away from the path of yoga and engaged himself, completely absorbed, in protecting, feeding, fondling, etc. of the fawn, devoid of all thoughts regarding the Atman. Just then, the hour that is inevitable for everyone, that of death, approached him with irresistible pace, just like a serpent gliding towards a rat in its hole. Even at the moment of death, he was looking at the fawn by his side, as if it were a son in mourning sitting beside him, and he left his body and the deer behind, with his mind firmly fixed on the latter. Though his old body was dead, his consciousness of the experiences of that birth was not lost. Following the fate of an ordinary man under such circumstances, he was born as a deer in the next life, but he retained the memory of the past birth. Thanks to the power of his adoration of the Supreme Lord, he remembered even in the deer body the cause of his birth in such a frame, and said to himself with an anguished mind, "Alas, alas, what a pity that I have fallen from the ways of the spiritually accomplished. My mind was completely offered at the feet of the Lord, and not a bit of my time was wasted in any occupation other than the thought of the Lord. Residing in the solitude of a holy forest ashrama, after abandoning all attachments of life, my mind was entirely fixed on Him, the Lord of all and the soul of all souls, completely absorbed in the devotional disciplines of hearing, praising, remembering, and worshipping, and in unbroken contemplation. Not a minute was spent in vain purposes. But alas, the fool that I was, my mind in the end went too far after that year with the disastrous consequences that have followed. Unknown to all, the Bharata deer was thus full of renunciation within. Therefore, he left his mother doe and his place of birth in the Kalanjara mountains and migrated to the spot where stood the ashramas of Pulatsya and Pulaha, which had an abundance of palm trees and which was dear to holy men because of the manifest presence of the divine. Then keeping himself aloof from the company of others, out of fear of the consequences, and moving about alone, feeding on dry leaves, grass, roots, etc., and biding the exhaustion of the prarabdha karma that had brought him to this strait, he awaited the dawn of his last day. And at last, when it came, he abandoned his dear body in the holy waters of the river there. Atha Navamo Dhyaya, Skanda 5, Chapter 9, Bharata's new birth. There was a Brahmana born in a Gotra of Angiras, noted for such qualities as control of the mind and the senses, austerity, Vedic study, Vedic teaching, generosity, joyous temperament, forbearance, humility, knowledge of Vedic rituals, absence of envy, knowledge of the Atman as distinguished from the body, and bliss of Atman consciousness. He had 2 wives, by the first of whom he had 9 sons, all noted for their exemplary conduct, knowledge of the Vedas, handsome appearance, generosity, and such other qualities as he himself possessed. By the second wife, he had twins, a boy and a girl. It is said that the second wife's son was Bharata reborn after his death as a deer, the assumption of this Brahmana body constituting his final birth. But even in this birth he was found to be very allergic to the company of his relatives. He was always mentally contemplating on the Lord's feet, through hearing, remembering, and recounting His excellences, which destroy one's bondage of karma. Ever remembering the experiences of his past birth through the Lord's grace, he was constantly vigilant against new obstacles, and in order to dissociate himself from the company of others, he put on the air of an inebriated man, a senseless man, and a man without sight or hearing. Eager that his son should excel him in virtue, his father decided to put him through all the preparatory disciplines that a Brahmana should undergo up to Samavartana, the ceremony marking the end of education. He first had his Upanaya performed and tried to teach him various purificatory rites like Achmana, in spite of being a senseless boy. But Bharata performed all these rites in an indifferent manner, even in the father's presence, so that the father might soon give him up as hopeless. With the idea of teaching him the Vedas, the father first instructed him in the Gayatri mantra, combined with the Vyahritis and the Pranava. But even after 4 months' teaching, the boy could not recite them with proper intonation. The father had deep affection for his son, who is to be looked upon by a father as a replica of one's own self. He therefore wrongly thought that it was his duty to teach his son, even against his will, all the duties the brahmacharin like purificatory rites, Vedic study, observance of vows, disciplines of life, service of teacher, performance of homa. He tried his best to do so, but failed. So years passed by with the father unaware of its passage on account of his engrossment in household affairs. But ever vigilant time soon swallowed him up in death. Thereupon the second wife of the Brahmana entrusted her two children to the elder wife, and herself accompanied her husband in death. After the father's death, the brothers who had only the theoretical knowledge of the Vedas but no spiritual realization thought that it was of no use to educate a senseless fellow like their brother, and soon desisted from attempts in that direction, without any inkling of his spiritual worth. When vulgar men, who were no better than two-legged animals, called him a madcap or idiot or dumb and deaf fellow, he behaved accordingly, and when they forced him to act in any way, he did so also. He subsisted on whatever he got by chance or by begging, or by working for wages, or by what he was given for doing forced labor. Whatever he got, whether it was small or large in quantity, whether it was well cooked or ill cooked, he ate it for the mere sustenance of the body, and not for placating the senses of taste. But he always remained in the intuitive bliss of Atman that was natural to him, and did not depend on any extraneous cause or stimulation for its inducement. Enjoyment and suffering, honor and dishonor, which are only matters affecting the body, were never attributed by him to the Atman, his real nature.
In heat and cold, in rain and wind, he moved about like an ox without anything to protect the body. By giving up bath and cleaning of the body, and by the practice of lying on the bare ground, his well-built and muscular frame was covered with a thick layer of dirt, through which his Brahmic luster was very dimly visible, like the luminosity of an unpolished gem. Wearing a dirty cloth and a soiled yajna pavita, he moved about here and there, marked by the vulgar folk as the madcap Brahmana. When he consented to do work in exchange for food, he would be engaged even by his brothers to level fields with earth and other similar works. While doing such work, he was not aware of what he did, whether he had levelled the ground, or whether he had heaped up earth helter-skelter, whether he had filled up the place, or whether more earth was required to do so. Whatever they gave him, be it rice flour, oil cake, chaff, spoiled pulses, or charred food, he ate up everything as if it were nectar. Now at that time, a chieftain of a tribe of brigands resolved to perform a human sacrifice to Bhadrakali in order to have a male issue. The sacrificial human beast he had secured managed to run away from his custody. So his men ran hither and thither in the darkness of that midnight in search of that victim. Unable to find him anywhere, they at last came across the scion of the Gotra of Angiras, sitting solemnly in a shed in the fields, guarding them from the depredations of deer, wild boars, and other animals. In seeing him of well-developed body, their face bloomed in the satisfaction that a proper victim had been obtained to complete their master's rites, and so tying him up with ropes, led him to the temple of Bhadrakala. The priests there, in accordance with the rules of their Abhichara ritual, bathed and decorated this human victim with new cloth, unguents, tilaka, garlands, etc., and fed him. Then amidst the sound of tom-toms, drums and songs, he was made to sit before the image of Bhadrakali, with the various ingredients for the rites like light, incense, garlands, flowers, tender leaves, fried grains, buds, fruits, etc. were arranged. The low-born priest, who officiated for the chieftain of the thieves, resolving to worship Bhadrakali by offering the human victim's blood as drink, took up the sharp sacrificial sword, uttering proper mantras. These low-born men of the tribe of thieves were by nature endowed with tamas and rajas. Due to the inordinate pride that wealth brought, they had abandoned the royal road of worship of Mahavishnu and were given to a licentious life and indulgence in slaughter unguided by any moral code. For, even though some sacrificial rites have been laid down for men of fierce nature when they are threatened by some dangerous situation, what these ruffians were now about to do was a transgression of an extremely cruel nature. The sacrifice of a great man who had become one with Brahman, who was the scion of a great and holy family, who was beyond all antagonism, and who was the friend of all, was an act of unpardonable and intolerable cruelty. The divine prowess emanating from that extraordinary victim began to burn up Bhadrakali herself, and so she emerged suddenly from the image. The Devi was forced to look at. Her eyebrows were arching with unbearable anger and remorse at the heinous act that was being contemplated. With her curved fangs, red eyes, and fierce look, she stepped out with a terrific roar, as if she was going to destroy everything. Taking up the same sacrificial sword, she cut off the heads of all those miscreants, drank their blood, and intoxicated with that drink, played football with their heads, and danced and sang with her attendants. Though these people were the worshippers of Bhadrakali, this sad end for them was but legitimate. For cruel rites performed to endanger great men are always bound to boomerang on the performer himself. O King Parikshit, do not consider it a wonder or anything unusual that Bharata was unperturbed even when his head was about to be cut off. He had abandoned the identification of the self with the body, and thus cut asunder that powerful knot of the heart. Persons like him are moved by universal love and friendship. Residing as the indweller in all, the Lord himself is ever vigilant in protecting such devotees from all dangers with his discus, that is the wheel of time. Skanda 5, Chapter 10. Story of Bharata meeting with Rahugana. Sri Shuka said, Rahugana, the king of Sindhu and Swavura, was once travelling in a palanquin to the ashrama of Kapila. When the party of the king was on the banks of the river Ikshumati, the captain felt the need for some more palanquin bearers. While he was searching for one, this exalted personage, Bharata, arrived at the spot, guided as it were by his destiny. Finding him young, well-built and strong, the captain felt that he could bear weight like a bullock or mule. So he compelled him to join the party of bearers he had collected earlier by force, although a great man like him did not deserve such treatment. The newly recruited bearer was found walking slow, surveying the path up to 3 feet, carefully in order to avoid trampling over living creatures. The pace of the palanquin bearers therefore began to vary, and King Rahugana, who was inside the palanquin, got vexed with its unsteady movements. So he exclaimed to the bearers, "O bearers, walk properly, all moving at an equal speed. Why are you not bearing the vehicle in the correct way?" Hearing their master's words of displeasure, they told him as follows, afraid of punishment. "O our Lord and King, we are not careless. Obedient to your order, we are carrying the palanquin the proper way. But this new bearer, though he has only now just joined the team, is not walking fast enough. It will be impossible to carry the palanquin with him in the team. The defect of one in a company is likely to affect the work of all who have to work with him." Concluding so, and moved by the words of the distressed palanquin bearers, King Raghugana, though he had served great devotees, nonetheless got somewhat angry at the new bearer, owing to the assertion of past tendencies. Overcome by Rajaguna and unable to recognize under his external garb the Brahmic luster of Bharata as live cinders covered by ashes, Rahugana said to him in a tone of ridicule, "O brother, you are very tired, aren't you? For you have indeed been bearing the palanquin single-handed for such a long distance. Isn't it so? Moreover, you are not so well built and strong. Besides, it seems you are also very old. But all your fellow bearers are not like that." Though ridiculed in this way, Bharata continued to walk as before, without uttering a single word in reply. For in this, his last birth, he had become one with Brahman without any sense of identification with this last body of his, which is a combination of elements brought about by avidya, and which has no substantial reality. Finding that the palanquin was still irregular in its movements, Rahugana became extremely angry and exclaimed, "O Sirrah, you, a living corpse, are you belittling me, your master, and violating my command? As Yama gives to heedless people, I shall give you, fellow, a radical treatment which will restore you to your original state." Thus the king, out of pride born of his royal status and learning, and out of the promptings of the qualities of passion and dullness, spoke many such stupid things to that holy man without understanding the ways of great spiritual personages. Not in the least perturbed by all that, Bharata, the bearer who had realized his unity with Brahma and attained to universal love, said to him smiling, as if mocking at the ignorance of the Raja, but really out of his extreme humility. Bharata said, "O bold one, your ridicule has relevance provided there is a thing called weight for one to bear, provided there is a destination for the traveller to reach, and provided there is corpulence for the jiva to be carried. Wise men, however, do not assent to such a proposition. Corpulence, leanness, disease, hunger, thirst, fear, quarrel, desire, old age, sleep, attachment, anger, pride, grief, etc., are all true only in regard to one born with a body, but not to me, who am the Atman. O King, the state of being a living corpse is not a characteristic special to me. It applies to everything that is an effect. For everything that is an effect is subject to birth and death, to a beginning and to an end. As for the charge of violating your command, O worshipful one, it would have been true if the relation between master and servants were permanent. Except for the worldly convention, I find no reason for the distinction between master and servant. Who is the master and who is the servant? Still, if you feel you are the king, you order me what I am to do. O brave king, if my behavior as a madcap or a dunce is a result of my establishment in my nature as the Atman, what change can your punishment effect in me? So also, if I'm really a confirmed lunatic or a dunce, your attempt at reforming me by punishment will be like powdering a powdered stuff once again. Sri Shuka said, having thus made a non-controversial reply, that sage, who was full of peace and who was no longer identifying himself with the body, continued to carry the palanquin of the king as before, in order to exhaust his prarabdha karma.
O descendant of the Pandavas, at this stage, the mind of Raghu Gana, king of Sindhu and Sauvira, was filled with faith, and he derived the fitness to inquire about the supreme truth. Excuse me. Hearing the words of Bharata, based on scriptural text and powerful enough to cut the knot of egotism, ahankara, Rahugana gave up his pride of being a king and hurriedly coming down from the palanquin, prostrated himself before that great one and said, who are you traveling incognito in this form? Among the famous ascetics like Dattatreya and others, who could you possibly be? You bear the holy thread indicating that you are a Brahmana. Whose son are you? Which is your place? How do you happen to be here? Am I to understand that you are Mahavishnu's incarnation, Kapila himself, come here to bless us? I fear not the thunderbolt of Indra, nor the trident of Rudra, nor the rod of Yama, nor the weapons of any of the divinities like Agni, Surya, Chandra, Vayu, Kubera. But I am terribly afraid of the consequences of insulting an illumined personage belonging to a great and holy family. Therefore, please tell me all about yourself. I feel that you are really one possessed of unfathomable knowledge, hiding your spiritual power and enlightenment, and going about incognito like a dunce. For your words conveying the meaning of Yoga Shastras and are too profound for our minds to grasp. I am myself on my way to the Muni Kapila, the incarnation of Mahavishnu, the teacher of all wise men in an embodiment of yoga, to learn from him what constitutes the refuge for man in this transmigratory existence. It may be that you are that very Kapila going about incognito to see the condition of the world. How can a person tied to the household and without any spiritual enlightenment understand the ways of master yogis like you? By doing various administrative and military duties, I really feel tired. So I can guess that you too will feel exhausted by walking, carrying a load. This practical aspect of life, based on actual experience, I accept as a fact. To deny it would be like denying the existence of pots with which watering is being done. In cooking, the heat applied to the pot penetrates to the water in it. That heat affects not only the surface of the rice in it, but the very core of the grains. In the very same way, owing to the mutual contact, the experience of the body pass on through the inner layers of senses, pranas and mind to the Atman. So the experience of samsara by the Atman has to be accepted as real. In answer to the criticism of the master and servant relationship, I reply, though the master and servant relationship is temporal and artificial, when a man becomes a king, he becomes the ruler and protector of others. If one accepts the idea that in discharging his duties, a ruler is only carrying out the will of God, the objection of pounding the already pounded stuff does not arise in regard to his corrective acts for changing even the incorrigible. For whoever performs the worship of the Lord through Swadharma is freed from all sins. Regarding my offense of slighting a great man, I seek the pardon of you. Out of your good will, deign to order things in such a way that I incur no sin. It may be said that you are not affected or perturbed by adoration or insult, as you are established in the attitude of universal friendship, even-mindedness towards all, and non-identification with the body. But still an offender like me, even if he were as powerful as Sri Parameshwara, is bound to perish in consequence. Athai Kada Sho Dhyaya. Story of Bharata, instruction to Rahugana. The Brahmana Bharata said, though you are in spiritual ignorance, you try to speak like a man of unfailing knowledge, which however you are not. For a really knowing one will not take this relative existence with its differences of master, servant, etc. as a proved fact in determining what is real. As it is found to be merely temporal on reflection, they call it an attribution to the thoughtless, of the thoughtless. But as you take it all as real, you are not the best among thinkers. Not only the world and its relation, but even the Vedic teaching dealing with karma belongs to the realm of falsity for a thinker. O king, in the highly eulogistic Vedic passages dealing with rituals relevant to the householder's life, there will not generally be any discussion on the truth of the Atman, which is based in purity and righteousness. A person who is not able to grasp the phenomenality and worthlessness of the happiness of waking life by applying the analogy of dream experiences will not be able to arrive at the truth even from the great teachings of the Vedanta. As long as a man's mind is dominated by any of the three gunas of Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, so long it will be uncontrollable. It will constantly engage the organs of knowledge and action in producing meritorious and demeritorious works. The mind, a bundle of tendency, is a principle of the 16 categories. It is prone to go to sense objects. The gunas of Prakriti move it here and there and also shape it into various modes of desire and other passions. Investing the jiva with various forms as devas, men, animals, etc., it generates all these differences of high and low based on these forms. The mind has been created by Maya as the manifesting field of the Atman. It is an entity responsible for keeping the jiva in the transmigratory cycle. For, holding the Atman in close embrace, it brings on him enjoyment, suffering and infatuation in accordance with the inevitable process of time. So long as there is ignorance, the world of practical life, with its gross and subtle conditions consisting of waking, dream and sleep states, persist as an object of experience before the embodied being. Therefore, the mind is said to be the cause of the jiva's bondage and of his liberation from the gunas, as also for his birth in high and low situation. The mind that is attached to sense objects causes miseries. and when it is free from such attachments, it leads to liberation. A wick light in contact with ghee gives light and smoke, otherwise it remains in its pristine condition. So also the mind, caught up amidst sense objects and actions, take up the form of retries or modes. When it is not so modified, it dwells in truth. The modes of the mind are said to be 11, these being 5 in the form of actions, 5 of knowledge, and 1 in the form of eye sense. The 5 organs of action become the basis of active modes, the 5 organs of knowledge modes, and the body of eye sense. 11 modes for the functioning of the mind are the 5 organs of knowledge, like smell, sight, touch, taste, and sound, the 5 organs of action, like excretion, sex, enjoyment, walking, speaking, and handling. The sense of mind is the 11th mode. Some speak of the sense of eye with reference to the body, the base in which the jiva dwells, as the 12th mode. By the influence of factors like nature, purification, unseen forces, and time, these 11 modes of the mind may take 100, 1,000, or a crore of shapes. They cannot, however, do so either by themselves or by mutual influence. It is born of the limitless power of the Lord, the Kshetra Jnana. The Lord is the knower of the field. These movements of the mind, caused by the power of Maya, which results in actions that do not in any way contribute to the purification of the mind, appear always in the states of waking and dream, and disappear completely in sleep. In Kshetrajna, the ever pure and unaffected spirit merely witnesses these movements of the mind. The Kshetrajna is the all-pervading spirit, the indweller of all, the cause of all causes, the self-conscious effulgence, the birthless, the God of all divinities, the director of all jivas, the possessor of the sixfold excellence, and the support of all jivas. He dwells as controller in all jivas by his Maya. Just as the vital energy permeates everything, moving and unmoving, and controls them from within, in the same way, the Supreme Lord Vasudeva, the Kshetrajna, permeates and controls all beings. The jiva is bound to move about in this transmigratory existence so long as he does not realize himself to be the Atman through enlightenment. For this he has, O King, first of all to become non-attached through the discharge of all his duties as offerings to the Lord, and to control his 6 enemies constituted of 6 infirmities: lust, anger, greed, intense longings, pride, and jealousy. The mind, which functions as the limiting adjuncts of the spirit, is a veritable field yielding a bumper harvest of the ills of transmigratory life. Until one understands this, one will be involved in the transmigratory cycle. The mind generates sorrow, suffering, infatuation, diseases, attachments, desires, enmity, and the sense of possession regarding objects. This mind is like a strong enemy grown very powerful because of negligence. It may ultimately be a mere appearance, but it has none the less hidden the Atman from view. Kill him with the arrow of service to the feet of Sri Hari, the teacher who gives enlightenment. Be extremely vigilant in this matter.
Iti Shrimad Bhagavate Mahapurane Paramahamsayam Samhitayam Panchamaskande Brahman Rahugana Samvade Ekadasho Adhyaya. With this we conclude today's reading, and we will commence tomorrow morning. 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. South African time. We conclude the day by surrendering all that has transpired to the grace of the Param Atman. Om Param Atmane Namah.